Hey everybody, I am your girl Kandi, and today I am talking to a very special woman who is a very talented woman who I'm so glad that I'm having a chance to sit down and talk to about anything under the sun that we want to talk about because there's so much going on right now. Now, some of you may or may not know, but let me give you a little background on my guest. Oh, it's not even my guest. I'm used to having a guest. So now I'm just having a conversation with Mila Jam. First of all, what's up, Mila?
First of all, let me say I fly above. I'm a haters. And what's up, girl?
Hey girl. I mean, it's hard for me to like jump out of that interview space because
I know.
for the whole month, I've been like interviewing a lot of great people, but right now you and I are having just a heart to heart discussion. And that's really what we're calling this today, the heart to heart. And
it's a phone call.
Yeah, it's a phone call. It's a phone call. But before we even get started, I really want to let people know Mila Jam is a New York City pop recording artivist. Now we're going to get to artivist in a minute. Artivist and transgender superstar. Mila Jam fills every room with talent, personality, and undeniable style. And you have also done something that I love so much, Broadway. You are a Broadway star, which is amazing in itself because a lot of people can't handle doing Broadway. We're going to get to that.
Uh-huh.
But just being a legendary artist yourself overall, I want to talk about all things music. I want to talk about all things artivist. So before we get past that, can you kind of explain what does artivist mean?
It is simple. It's an artist that is an activist, and you put the two together and you have artivist. I'm an artist at heart, first and foremost. And then in my work, in my being, in my space, I'm an activist based on just my life experience and where I've come from and where I'm going. So I put those two together, and I didn't create the word, although I use it a lot and people think I created it, but it is a word that people use, and it's artivist.
Oh, okay. I might try to use that one time too.
Okay, just call my manager.
No, I'm really not gonna do it. Well, I mean, maybe, I don't know. But
you would say, I'm sure you could, it's honestly something I think that, listen, girl, anyone who's an artist and Black can use the term artivist, because I think everything that we do is a movement in itself, and you're just adding that flavor of your artistry.
Yes. Right now, it's a serious movement going on in this world. And,
yes, it is.
I visited your Instagram page, and so I see that you have really been out there making noise, really leading the movement in NYC. I saw you were, what was happening in New York? Was it a march that you were in front of everybody, telling everybody what to say, what to do? What was going on?
Okay, so June 1st, and I think that's what you're referring to, June 1st, it kicks off Pride Month. And usually there are a lot of festivities that start going on at the beginning of the month to get to the end of the month, which is usually the parade or the celebration. But I was asked to read the names of deceased trans people that we've lost this year and beyond. And I went to the Pride Vigil rally, and I was there just to read names, and I wasn't going to speak. And then people made space for me and other trans women, and they were like, speak. And I kept saying, no, I just wanted, like, it's homage to the people that are no longer here. And then I just was moved. My spirit was moved to just speak to my community and to people, and just to say, like, we're here to love each other and support each other. So that's what kind of kicked all of this current, noise off for me and for the community, because it was such a strong moment of like call and response and just from the heart.
Right. This month, it has not been your typical Pride month. It's been so many different conversations, a lot about race, and then obviously about how as Black people we're treated, but then also the conversation of how trans women, Black trans women, are treated. That's come up. So as a Black woman, you always gonna get hit on every side of the coin. It's always going to be some challenges that you face.
Right.
But as a Black trans woman who has so many, you're Black, you're a woman, and you're dealing with
it's called Intersectionality 101.
Yes, explain. Help us understand.
Yeah, so, if for those of you who don't know what intersectionality means, it's basically the crossroads of where all of the differences and nuances that we experience, they kind of meet and intersect. So not only am I a Black person, but I'm a woman, and I'm a woman that happens to be trans, and there's 3 general layers of intersectionality that I face. I'll be discriminated against for being Black, for being a woman, for being trans. It usually happens in that order, because as someone who's not visibly trans, in most spaces, people don't just know or assume my transness, and that's a whole nother conversation we could have. But it's really about you. My mother even, she taught me, they're going to see your color first. You walk into a room, you're a Black person. Then they see Mila, the woman, and then they see if they have a conversation or we get to know each other, that my experience is trans. And those are the intersections that I have to deal with on so many different varying levels. So, you're getting hit at different angles. You just never know which one is going to be what. And even with the transness, it's something that sometimes can be a sneak attack, because everyone looks at you differently based on, like, they can judge you as a woman, they can judge you as a Black person. But if we don't really know who you are, how you identify, your gender identity, it's like, that's a conversation that comes after someone either says something to you or you talk to them. And people think that they just know. People think that they can just assume when they know that someone is trans or that someone is, different. So that's like, yeah.
So, okay, here's the conversation. What do you do when you meet someone and, this is the thing that I would definitely have to say. I feel like this has also been a time of education. You know what I mean? And I mean that in all aspects of your experience, of my experience, because like you said, as Black people, I feel like we've been having to educate everybody on how to treat us, how to, what is cool, what is not cool, even with, how people be like saying stuff like, well, why we can't do that, but y'all can do that. Well, you can't do that.
You
can't say
for you to do, and that's for us to decide.
Exactly. So with that being said, being a woman of trans experience, I'm sure there are things that you just have to educate even your other Black people in the community of.
That's the big conversation we're having now. It's being Black and trans and or queer, or being non-gender conforming for some people. It's the fact that we're fighting the struggle of getting people to respect our race. And the infighting that kind of comes with that is there are still a lot of Black people who don't make space for queer Black people, who don't make space for Black trans women. They're at disproportionate rates. Black trans women are murdered. I think a lot of that has to do with, in our Black community, the lowest thing you can be on the totem pole is a Black trans woman. The second sort of phase of that is being maybe a person who's a Black gay man or a Black lesbian. And there's just this narrative around loving Black trans women is something that is wrong, that is shameful. And I don't think we're really dealing with the important message that our Blackness is what unifies us. We know what it's like to be oppressed as people. Even if you don't understand, I always say this conversation is not about feelings for me. It's about the principle. It's about the fact that, it doesn't matter how you feel about me, if you're attracted to me or not attracted to me as a woman or whatever. We're Black and we're fighting for the same rights generally in that arena. Then we go home and we have to have our own conversation in the kitchen, because we don't make space for Black people in our community to be different, to be queer, and we know queer Black people in the church, in the school, in the play, we are all around each other. We have family members. So we just still sort of we just kind of skate over the fact that queer Black people don't have a say, don't have rights, shouldn't be considered or respected when we're out in the streets, when we're making our way to the grocery store, when we're being attacked on a corner in the middle of the night. So I just this is the conversation we're having right now during all of this, during a pandemic, during a protest. We are really looking at what's under the rug. And I think now is the time that we actually do it and we talk about it.
Right. Well, I think that's the cool part, is that lately we've been able to have these conversations that aren't necessarily always being had openly, you know.
Yeah.
And that people are being receptive, I think. I
I
personally.
think so too. I think a lot of people are kind of feeling like it's really about looking at your, what am I doing to
Mm-hmm.
to add to the conversation. You know, we're asking white people to make space and listen and stop appropriating and stop doing things that make them look foolish.
Mm-hmm.
So queer Black people are asking Black people at the same token to stop making fun of us, stop putting us down and belittling us, and not giving us that grace of saying that your experience is valid. I mean, I think this does stem down from a lot of patriarchal issues. You know, a lot of men in the Black community have to keep up a facade or a certain face to feel like they're important and uphold their status, that they
Right.
can't be respectful to trans women, but you can be. And it's not about us sleeping together or wanting to be with you. It's
Mm-hmm.
about just being cool and being chill and being, you know, respectful in that certain way. And that's a whole different thing you got to deal with if that's like, if you're discovering you're interested or into trans women, because we know our community, the Black community, is still shaming
Yeah.
people for being gay, for being
Right.
different.
Everything is hush hush. Everything is.
Everything is hush hush. And then, yeah, everything is just always like taboo. I
Mhm.
mean, and we live in the age of social media. We
Right.
know what's going on.
Yeah.
People know it. Don't get new with me. Don't get brand new. We know
Yeah.
what the DM is, and we know what's going on, and we know what's not being said.
I
So
think social media brought out a lot. Like when social
yeah,
media started, I guess, well, not necessarily
like
social media, but like, say for instance, your
10 years
Instagram.
ago, it blew
Yes,
up.
it's blew up 10 years ago, basically. I feel like that's when a lot of things just started, being in the forefront of everything. I think,
Yeah, it's reflecting that mirror and the
right,
hiding, the way that it's interesting too. I think that with social media, even with the internet coming in, you know, before the internet, we definitely didn't understand what it was like to experience life through other people's eyes that were experiencing what we were experiencing, because we always thought we were the only one. You might have thought you was the only Black girl that could sing, you're the only Black trans girl in the world, you're the only Black boy who could play football, or all this stuff.
right,
And then the internet shows us that, guess what? There's all these people who do the same thing that you do in
right,
these different ways. And
right.
then internet, social media is coming in to give us the platform to express how we do that to a degree where so many people can see that and hone in it, on it, and follow it,
And gain
and
support.
gain support for it.
Mhm.
But it also gives you that dark underbelly of letting people, you know, the comment section is hot.
Oh
The
my,
hot block is
the
the comment section.
comments.
And I just, you know, the comments are like, I feel like the comments are the den of darkness. It's just like, that's the pits of
I'd be scared to look at the
evil.
comments, to be honest with you, a lot of times.
If
I'd be
you
like,
have integrity, don't look at the comments.
you said about what?
I said, if you have your own personal integrity, the comments are not for you. The
Right,
comments are for other people who are just trying to feel their fantasy.
right. So, it's just touching on what we were just saying just a second ago about just the whole topic of our community, shaming, people who are in love with trans or had,
Yeah.
just whatever. The topic of a relationship, that is going to be part of a storyline that's on The Shy this season, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm on The Shy this year, which is exciting.
Congrats. Give you ups, big ups. Woo!
Yes, I'm super excited about it. So this past Sunday, which was episode 2, at first I don't think anybody was actually saying, because you don't want to give away things, but they
Right.
touched on it. This episode 2, Luke James's character, who's new to season 2 of The Shy, he's in a relationship with a woman of trans experience.
Mm-hmm.
Now, she kind of, I guess kind of like the way you described yourself earlier as being a woman who people don't automatically
See as trans, right?
see as trans. So nobody, I think, even knew on episode
Right.
1, but they kind of like hinted.
They see her story. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, they hinted to the story in this episode too. So I hope I'm not giving it. Well, I'm not giving it away. But if somebody's not really,
now
we're
gonna watch.
Yeah. So anyway, a friend of mine texted me like at 3 a.m. last night, I guess after he was watching. And he said, Is Luke's girlfriend on the show, is she trans? I said, yes. He was like, oh, I thought so. It just hit me at that moment that I was thinking to myself, I was like, okay, a lot of people who are watching this show are probably having this moment of question because they didn't say the word trans. They didn't say the word. She just, she told him she wanted to go out. They went to a club, and as they're in the club, I guess she went to the bathroom or something, and a gay man tried to hit on him, and then he got all of us all
got worked up about it.
Now all mad, and then he wanted to fight, whatever, and then he leaves. They leave out. She breaks the situation up, and then they leave, and he's like, why would you take me to a place like that? I don't even I don't like gay. I don't like it. And she's like, well. And she was like, that's still, like basically like that's still family.
That's connections. Yeah.
So her point was like, if you can't accept, family or anybody that is at the club or whatever, then you can't accept me. It's still.
I have a question for you in terms of solidarity, and I feel like I know how you answer, but I don't want to assume. But the power of a cis Black woman saying, I don't have any tolerance for transphobia or homophobia because of my friends and family that I care about. The power of you say, like, would you say that to someone who came to you and sort of was scoffing at like, oh, I don't know if that, I can't be around, I don't want to, because the reality is a lot of men are, however they feel, a lot of them get a pass because there are a lot of women out there who are transphobic and are not supportive of trans women, don't support our sisterhood. And, where there are differences in our experience, there's a lot of parallel, and there's a lot of things that we do share. And that conversation, I think, is very rich. And I think guys need to know that, like, it's one thing to be with a trans woman who says, you need to respect my community. But it's another thing for straight cis men to be with a cis woman who can say, if you're on that transphobia, like, I don't like that BS, there's no place for you.
Yes, for sure. No, I'll tell anybody who's listening that I definitely have a problem with anybody not respecting trans women or anybody of trans experience, period.
Yeah. Because that allyship is important. It really is.
Oh, for sure. I didn't make it I posted about it earlier this month. Remember when the young lady had got beat up at the what was a store or something?
Oh yeah, you're talking about Ayana.
Yeah.
Ayana Dior.
Yeah, I posted about it earlier this month, and was like, I just was trying to get support for her,
Right.
And I was shocked at how many negative comments there were. I was just kind of like, I was thrown off by that. But it's a conversation in my house a lot. And I think my daughter, she's even more outspoken than I am, meaning Riley.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah.
And she's of this Generation Z, so they are
hello.
They are really, really all about, speaking out. So we have definitely had those conversations in our house. And it's with my husband. We go back and forth because I think, to your point, cisgender men who consider themselves straight, they would definitely say, well, not definitely, but a lot of them will say, oh, of course, I'm cool. I don't have.
They will say that.
Yeah. But then it may be something else that they say or do that comes off as, You know, like,
Problematic.
okay, yeah, that wasn't cool, or, you know, whatever. So we have these conversations in our house.
Which is good, because that shows that you're discussing and you're conversing about it, because there are so many people who just look at it as like, you know, at face value, and don't know someone specifically trans, don't have anything to relate it to, and act like I'm good and I'm cool until they're in a situation, and then they don't know how to act, or act like they don't know how to act. And, you know, I feel like the time is now for us to talk about, why are you threatened? Why, what does that mean outside of everyone else's opinion? Why does that mean something certain for you? And how amazing and beautiful it would be if people would realize how much of a big deal it really isn't. You know, it really isn't that big of a deal. And I always say these things based off the fact, like, in the Black community, we don't make a lot of space for people to be different. We got to be a certain type of Black. You know, if you're not singing, but I'm like, really, if you're a vocalist and you're a singer, if you're not like a diva Black singer, if you're not singing, you know, like, if you don't sound like Aretha, if you don't sound like Cynthia Erivo, if you don't sound like these big powerhouse, if you're not Whitney, you know, it's like, we can't be nuanced, and we can't be a Black girl doing country music. Why not? Like, you know, a Black girl doing pop music. Why not? Like, it should be, we're not a monolith, basically, is what I'm saying.
So let's touch on that. Well, first of all, where are you from?
Originally? Girl, so we're family. You just don't know it, but like, from extension of, we're not cousins or anything like that. But I'm from ATL.
Oh, you're from here?
I'm from ATL. I'm by way of a small town, Columbus, Georgia. I'm from Columbus, and all my family's in Atlanta. And actually, my aunt, who is a famous photographer, used to photograph you and your girls in your group back in the Dizzy, when you first started doing music. And her name is Sheila Turner. She's a photographer, and she used to shoot you ladies back in the beginnings. And yeah, I'm ATL. I'm like, you know, Southern girl, but you know, I transplant to New York.
How long ago did you move to New York?
I've been in New York over a decade. I've decided that New York was just where I needed to be. So I left as soon as I graduated. I went to high school in Columbus, Georgia, and then I moved straight out of there from Columbus to New York and started touring and doing things. That was almost going on, that's a little bit over 15 years ago.
Okay, so you started your music career in New York.
Well, in New York, yeah. So I didn't have the connections of doing music in Atlanta.
Okay. So as a woman of trans experience, do you feel that it was harder for you to get into music in the business? Or you feel
I'll put it this way. It's like, when we are marginalized the way that we are, when you're already at the bottom of a situation, there's only up that you can go. I deal with like the least amount of everything. You know, people are going to throw you crumbs and going to throw you pennies. I've built an empire or my own legacy with pennies, with no money, with no backing, with no team, I do have a team now, but I'm saying in terms of like being signed to a major label and having that sort of support, like, it is one of those things where people will ask me now, well, how does that happen? And I say that happens with just grassroots organization, like grassroots hustle. I've played every little venue, no people in the audience, nobody showing up. And when people do eventually, it's like you have that experience to go behind it, which I think is beautiful and key to having strength in an industry. But it doesn't just happen, it doesn't just happen because, definitely as a Black trans woman, it doesn't just happen because you're cute. It doesn't just happen because, there's all these hurdles that you have to jump through for other people to accept you. When I'm like, I'm great, and I'm just going to fight for myself. If you're going to join, you're going to join. If you're not going to join, you're going to miss out. And that's just what it is. But I do think that the system and the way that the industry is built, it's not built for trans people, for trans women. I think that's why we have to just come in, knocking doors down and saying, People want to hear what I have to say as a leader in my community. People want to hear what messages I have to bring to the table. I should be on the radio like Lady Gaga. I should be on, you know, the BET Awards. There wasn't any representation of trans women on the BET Awards last night. That's another conversation. However, we're here, we always been here. And so we just continue to fight without anyone giving us permission to.
Right. That, I mean, well, you know what, as you said, I mean, when those things are noticed, we just have to bring it to their attention.
Yeah.
You know, and that's my thing, even as a, you know, just being Black.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, this has been my month to bring things to people's attention. I've been sending my emails. I've been like, no, seriously. I mean, I've actually gotten a few things, important things accomplished. You know, I'm just like, you know what? It's time to have that conversation. And, you know,
it's time to have this conversation.
Right. And some people, like you say, they can be allies, but they still may not know when they're doing something that is offensive or they've done something they could do better. And so I feel like it's just our job, or it's our time to say, hey, hello, you can fix this.
This is where you can do your part.
Exactly. This is where you can do your part. Yeah, so exactly. That's what I was thinking, you know, me personally. But for
real. You know, and I think of it as like, I love to do what I do. I feel like it's a calling. I come from the school of the time of icons where you felt you were chosen to do what you do. And to me, what I do is not about just being like on trend and being, like I tell people, me being a trans woman is not a trend. I know it's something cute for people now to get into. Oh, I see you on TV. I hear about it. There's the tipping point, the Vern Cox, all of that stuff. It's really about, I know who I am. I've known that for a long time. I didn't have the vocabulary to explain it. You know, I had to go through my own cocooning and come out and blossom and be more of a representation of who I knew I was. And the hardest part of that was figuring out, how do I still do what I've always dreamt of doing after that? Like, it's like, I always knew I was always an entertainer. I always knew I wanted to do music. But what does that look like if you're transitioning? And what does that feel like? And so the narrative shifted a little bit because I have a different experience to fight for. But I mean, you know, I just always been passionate about following my dream.
As you should.
As we should. If it's your dream and you want it, you will do anything.
How did you get into Broadway?
So I'm kind of one of those, I mean, I've done lots of theater. I've done lots of tours. I toured with Rent for a few years. And then as far as Broadway goes, my experience in Broadway has been leading a huge organization called Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS. And what they do is they do these huge once a year concerts where they bring in special like Broadway actors. Cause I haven't been a lead in a Broadway show on Broadway, but this is my experience as a lead person. For 3 years, I brought in to be a lead player in the show to headline the performances. And the performances are by a bunch of choreographers from Broadway that get together. They put on this big fundraising event to raise money for HIV/AIDS. And it's everyone in the industry. It is like the night that is, like, honestly, it's like bigger than the Tony Awards. It's much more fun than the Tony Awards. But yeah, Broadway Bears is the name of it. And I call myself the muse of Broadway, because while I have not had a leading role on a Broadway show, I've been connected to so many Broadway shows personally. One of my best friends is the dancer, choreographer, dance captain for Lion King. I have friends who are in Hamilton. I have friends who are in, Book of Mormon, and like all of my family is just Broadway. So I spend a lot of my time backstage at shows, involved in a lot of their events. They usually call me and say, Mila, we want to do something and collaborate with you. I've choreographed pieces for Broadway shows for their big events and stuff. So it's that kind of relationship. But that happened, my connection into Broadway happened at least 10 years ago. And it's just been an ongoing kind of thing, evolving. I've been in some Broadway workshops. Shows didn't get picked up. But that's, but that the wheels have been working. And that's what happened. these things don't happen overnight. You know, They take time, and they take money, and they take funding, and they take people being all together on the same page. So yeah.
Well, I grew up with the opportunity to have, a family member that was very open, and our family was just it was never a thing or a problem. So I always grew up with that just being, cool. And my uncle, he used to share so many different stuff with me. So I was always kind of like in the know, as growing up from childhood. But for people who haven't been in the know, and I'm just saying, even for people who are in the know, I feel like a lot of terms have come about in the last decade, I guess, last few years.
Even 5 years.
Yeah, last 5 years. Because, there are certain things, like I don't know. When did the term cisgender happen?
Yeah, so cisgender, I don't have an exact date, but I feel like the word has sort of come up within the last 5 years, maybe a little bit longer, because the tipping point, so to speak, featuring Laverne on the Time cover, Time magazine, that was, I think, 7 years ago. And so I would say maybe a year or so after that, the term cisgender started to be a conversation piece. I don't think it really caught on until maybe 2 years ago. Okay. But it's been within the past 6 years that it's sort of come up.
Right. I was
in like casual conversation. Yeah.
Right. I was just wondering, okay, am I?
And for people who don't understand, because I know there's people who are like, what does that mean? And cisgender is basically, it's a term that says as is. If you're cisgender, how you were deemed when you were born, if you were, said you were male or female, that's exactly how you identify when they spank you on your butt and they say this is what you are. Trans is across from, or like in transit, it's on the opposite. It's like, it's a flip-flop. It's really simple. If you are born, male bodied and you're a trans woman, you're the opposite of that expression. Same thing for a female bodied person being trans. It's the opposite, being a trans man. Yeah, just for people who may not understand what that means.
Gotcha. No, I was just saying, because I was like, I thought I was kind of like in the know.
Yeah.
In certain terms that I was like, okay, I'm just really getting to know myself. I feel like obviously in this past year, I've definitely used the term, but I was like, okay, well, wait.
And some people think it's derogatory, and it's not meant to be derogatory to like put people down, because we've been sort of taught that you have to be that, okay, like the idea of straight or cisgender without that word is that's the default setting. And we have to get out of the mind frame of this binary default setting, because you just negate people that are not that. Everyone else that is different. So you even the playing field, when you say like being trans and being cis, they're two different things, but it's not saying that one is better than the other. Does that make sense? And like, we have to sort of grasp that that's what it's about. It's not about having a hierarchy of your body being matching. However, someone told you, the society we live in says, oh, you're a better person or you're more normal if you're cisgender. But that shouldn't be the conversation. It should be that it's just a marker that describes your personal experience. It's just something that's, unique to your nuance and your experience.
Okay, I'm going to ask this question, and I hope it's not offensive. You have obviously been openly sharing your experience. Because you talk about it openly. But there are some women who do not share that they are trans experience. Have you always felt free to share?
No, I have not, but I'm going to tell you how it came about and what I did. It was under the guise that let's say 10 years ago, I would be safer with this idea that like, I'm a woman. The like asterisk or the check mark is that I'm a trans woman. And so that little bit of information is a safety issue for me. It's about like being able to be safe and to feel like I'm going to be okay in certain spaces. But like, if you're someone who's trans and the term we use is stealth, that you don't appear to be trans, people can't tell you're trans, it can feel safe on the surface for you to not have to own up to it or tell anyone about it, because you're assimilating and you're living your life. But it's so depleting, and it's so like, it just negates my experience. I should be proud of where I've come from and the journey that I've had to get to where I'm at. And so I think the ownership for me, I realized some handful of years ago that it was like, I just shouldn't be ashamed of it, because if I'm ashamed of it, then that's going to make people think I'm shameful. And I don't want to feel that way. I want to feel empowered. I want to feel like I'm good, and I know who I am, and I know my purpose. And that even helps the narrative in the story when describing this to people. And when we see ourselves reflected on TV and whatever, there are a bunch of trans kids out there who are realizing, oh, okay. And so I don't, listen, all my trans sisters out there, and I know there are many of you that are living your lives and it's nobody's business. Right. We just need to get to the place where it's not even a matter, that people don't, it's not something that you can be killed for, or that people are getting all up in arms about for, because believe you me, there are a lot of women out there that would say, and by the way, I'm trans, and you wouldn't know. And that space is just as important as it is for women who are visibly trans and are being very, transparent about it.
Right.
But I've owned it for a long time. So that, in a nutshell, it wasn't just yesterday. I was like, obviously.
No. I was just curious to know. I mean, everybody's experience is different.
But every day it is a conversation. I don't want to cut you off, but that every single day of my life, it is something that I have to, it's literally like I have to address it every single day. There's not a day that doesn't go by where I will have to, because not everybody will know I'm trans. I mean, whatever. People may know because I may be very popular or seen in the public eye. But I come across a fair share of people that I may have to tell that to, and they didn't know. And that's one thing that cis people don't have to do. You don't have to go around telling people. Yes, it's exhausting. It's hella exhausting.
I mean, it's just kind of like, similar, I guess, in the sense of when you hear lately, a lot of Black people, you're Black, but I'm just saying on the Black experience of it, how a lot of Black people are like, we're tired of,
having to educate.
Yeah. So I hear what you're saying. But I was just curious to know, like, is that annoying? You gotta
as a Black person, you should know what that annoying feeling feels like. It's hella annoying. And then we all over here talking about Google. Google is making the most money because we are literally promoting them constantly. My trans sisters and Black people. Oh, you got a question? Google. Oh, you don't know the answer? Google. What is a trans woman? Google. Like, it's very simple.
I get you. I feel what you're saying. I personally feel like it's some things that you just, that the feeling of, what it's like to be of trans experience is still, you ain't gonna just get that from Google.
No, you won't. But what I'll say is this, is when you Google, you have shown initiative to do some work. And then you come to the conversation. Anyone who stops me and says, oh, girl, I just want to know, want to talk about you trans and what is it like? But if you come and you say, I was Googling transphobia and I didn't know that there were a lot of trans women that just get murdered for no reason, that stimulates my desire to want to converse with you about what's going on in my experience and then tell you my story. And that opens the invitation up, and you've done a little bit of, and you've done some work. That's what we want white people to do. Do some work. and then we can figure out what needs to be done. Give us ownership. But that's another conversation.
Okay. Exactly. Like, okay, so with that being said, do you think do you have to fight harder for your Blackness or for your transness? Meaning, as far as like right now, Everybody
in
fighting
this
for
space,
rights
of my experience,
mm-hmm.
I have to I have to fight harder for my transness, because it is the thing about me that gets me the least amount of respect. Um, and, although this is shifting and it's very strange, because now it's like it's being, now I'm a commodity because I'm trans and people want to talk to you because that's the conversation and that's the narrative. And we want trans people. We're going to hire someone to be a part because we needed to fill that quota. But I feel like being Black and dealing with that is something, while it's something that will never go away, my transness is something that's varied, because it's a conversation that has to come up. It's a conversation that has to be discovered. It's a conversation that I have to deal with that is often under the radar, and then it has to be dealt with differently. It's a child with a different,
because immediately when somebody see you, they automatically, like your mom said, they automatically know that you're Black. So do you feel the need to share when you meet people, or you just
observe,
ask, or they don't?
I observe, I take in, because we do that as Black people. I observe, I take in, I assess the situation. It's different around different people. It's different when if I'm around men, I already know that most women, the sense, your third eye is already situated differently, because men, the energy shifts and you go, I'm being looked at, approached. And so I already have to tell my senses, like, I don't know how this person is going to react to this information about me, but I know I sense what they're seeing and what they're interested in. And now my spider senses are like, how do I protect? How do I deflect? How do I, stay safe? If I'm interested, that's even more weird, because, I'm like, I want to have a conversation with this person, but I don't know how they're going to react to this information about me. So it can be dangerous. And then oftentimes it's just like, most trans women, most of us, we just don't even want to deal with anyone or be bothered, because my, personal safety is more important than just trying to get a date. That's where I'm at in my life. And I know not everyone is, but that's just how I have to navigate it. So it's just, it can be a heavy burden to deal with. Yeah. But the parallel is that, Black people, we have to deal with that when we go shopping, when we have someone following us around, when we have to be like, who's watching me? And they think something about me. That happens too, in a different way, being trans.
Yes, that's definitely, I guess that definitely has to be interesting. And the reason why I was really wanting to ask that question is because, like I said, those are conversations that we have at our house,
Yeah.
My daughter, she was saying to my husband the other day, she was like, that ain't your business. Like, people don't have to share if they don't want to share. So that was like a conversation. Like, this is
But I even want to challenge the idea of, how do we make it our business in a positive way? Because the reality is, and I talk about this a lot, when we're dating people or we're having relationships with people, we always say it's nobody's business, or it doesn't matter what people think. Yet we actually treat people like, we tell people about who we saw, who we were dating, who we talked to. We share that information and we use that as currency to have allyship with our friends and our family. And when you can't talk about that with the people in your family or people and you hide that, which is what a lot of men do with trans women, then it's immediately dark and it's bad and it's evil and it's not good. So where do we find that healthy experience of, listen, I'm not saying that every Black dude needs to be like, yo, I met this trans girl and I thought she was kind of fly and cool, I'm gonna go talk to her. You got to figure that out for yourself. But the reality is to make space for this conversation that, yeah, there are women out there that are trans that you might actually be attracted to. Then that's work that guy has to go back at home and do and figure out what that means for him, whatever that means for him. And this questioning of like, oh no, in the Black community, if you're talking to trans women, you're gay, or that's gay. That is still the basis of the conversation. Y'all, it's 2020. It is not the same thing. And we have to stop perpetuating that narrative of, oh, I met a girl, she was trans, oh, you gay, all right. Like, let's stop doing that. Let's shift the narrative, because it's different. It's not the same. And whether or not you feel like your straightness is still on the same level before you met that trans woman, that's really for you to decide. But I think collectively we should just be more respectful of, there are Black people that like different things, and we don't need to be dark in the DMs about it.
Right. Period.
Period. By the way, I'm here for Riley. Yes, girl. She's progressive, and she's like on it.
Oh, she will check you so hard about. I said, okay, Miss Fight the Power. She is fighting for all rights. Okay.
I love it. I love it.
But I feel like she's definitely represents this generation. I feel like I said, I just feel like right now, you know, because they're educated differently, because they've been around it. Nothing is hush hush anymore. I mean,
well, that's even with the idea of fluidity in people's sexuality nowadays. Younger kids are more not subscribing to, I'm just straight. Like, that's even being pushed out. It's like being fluid is now, they're like, I just like whoever it is that comes up and that makes me feel good, or that I think is cute. And, you know,
right. And exactly to your point, I fit that exactly to me is what has happened. It's like now, even when, you know, I guess in middle school is when most kids start dating and stuff like that. I don't know about everywhere else, but here in Atlanta, I know a lot of, like, you know, my daughter's friends and different kids that I know of that, you know, the schools that they went to, that is just like, now it's like no big deal. Like, it's norm, you know what I mean? And so I just feel like when you're brought up differently, or, you know, have a different, exposed differently, you know what I mean? Your mind's like, your head, I mean, the way you think is just going to be different. You're going to be way more open to whatever. You're not going to be closed-minded, basically.
Right,
So,
I agree.
I just feel like, as far as it's definitely taking longer than what it should. But as, you know, time goes on, I think that, as, like, to your point, that people it won't be a serious conversation.
And I do think that it is, and I say this about Black Lives Matter and the movement. I do think our experience with these intersectionalities is like a diet. It's something we have to work at. We have to, like, practice it, because with any regimen, it's like, you know, we fall off, we get on, you know, you're feeling right and tight, and then you're losing your way a little bit. And so that's kind of what's happening. Like, Black Lives Matter started, 6 years ago? We was marching in the streets then. And why are we still marching today over the same thing? And so this is not the last conversation you and I will have about this, Kandi. It's going to be something we have to talk about again in however much time. But hopefully what we're learning is we're implementing the homework, and we're learning the new things to do, is what we're telling white people. It's like, why are we still asking for the same things? And y'all are just doing, like, you're just appeasing us.
Right.
Don't just appease. Shift, change, make new choices. You know, put a person of color in place, in power in your company. Ownership. You know, put a trans woman or a queer person. And why is it that we can't have these companies have someone represent each sort of demographic of our experiences?
Right.
You know, we should have a trans person on the board of such and such, and a queer person, and a gay man on the such and such, and a Black woman that's not trans. You know, it's just a no-brainer to me. But for people, they don't see that.
No, I totally agree with what you're saying. It's just like, it's all about your leadership will reflect the changes that are going to be made.
Right. And we have to stop thinking that it's taken away from, because as your sister, I'm not here to take away anything that you deserve or that you've earned. It's all about the conversation. It's all about for me personally, it's all about the uplifting and the support, you know?
Speaking of, The question is, how can cis women help to bridge the gap between ourselves and our trans sisters?
I would say first of all, if you don't have a trans sister that you can talk to, be open to, I'm not saying you need to run one down and you need to hunt some trans women down, but be open to making a connection and making space for her. And it's just about your actions. It's about having these conversations with your family and your friends. And ultimately the trickle effect is talking to these men and to your men and the men that you're with. And I think shifting the energy of feeling threatened by what a trans woman might bring to the table that you may not bring to the table. I think that's more based on that particular person versus who or what the person is, because we're not all the same. Yeah, is there a trans woman that could be trying to move in on your man? People are people, but it's like creating a space to be like, hey sis, I want to talk to you about this. I want to get to know more about you and about this thing. Oh, you deal with that? Oh, I had a conversation with my cis girlfriends, my homegirls that are from Atlanta. We were talking about, this is just one of my personal stories. We were talking about a guy I met on the train here in New York. He tried to get my number. We was just talking. It was cool. I was lukewarm and I was really just focused on where I was going. And then he was like, here, I'll give you my number to give you the power. So I was like, cool, I took it. The next day, I kind of thought, I'm not really going to waste his time, but I was like, I'll text him and just be like, to see how interested he really was. Hey, it's Mila, you met me. And he was like, oh, hey, what's up? We started to chat a little bit. And his brother was like, you know, you seem so cool and gorgeous and beautiful. You're not married. You don't have a man, da, da, da. I was like, let me just tell you, I'm a trans woman. And I just got it out of the way because that's usually what I like to do. And I was very upfront about it. And he was like, oh, okay, cool. But he was a little hesitant. Then he was like, oh, I watched the show Pose. And then he tried to get all these merits about it because he watched the show. I'm like, that's great. Like, cool, good for you. And then he started to ask all of these really, real inappropriate questions. And they just went beyond basic questions that you were just asking when you're interested in getting to know. And I felt like we were not at that level where we're not deep into like a second date where we could start talking about certain things, whatever. I showed this to my girlfriends and they were like, you don't deal with anything really different. It's all the same. They all just da 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 da. And I was like, no, look at this. And he started asking questions like, do you think like a man? Do you act like a man when you're doing this? Is this because you used to be a man? You do things like this way and you have this kind of tendencies and you act this kind of, and I was just kind of like, you're clearly negating the woman you just met. Like, I don't know what you're creating. You just created a whole story in your mind about who I am. And it just came off so wrong. And my girls are like, okay, you definitely deal with something totally different. And that's crazy.
Right.
And then I basically was like, and then he tried it on a couple occasions. You know, he did the disappear, the ghost. And I wasn't really interested. Let me be honest, y'all. I wasn't really interested. But he did that thing that guys do where they leave you all, they jump off the cliff and leave you hanging. And then a month later, how you doing? I mean, I think I literally said, I don't have this number saved. I don't know. And he was kind of like,
well, because at the end of the day, he's actually curious.
He is curious. And
he definitely interested, but he just,
But then again, I was not interested enough to be taking him through this, collegiate course of what he needed to know. And what it felt like, and this is my point, it was so one-sided. It was all about him and his feelings. It was so selfish. It was not about how I felt, what I deal with, what, you know what I mean? That's really what it was. That was one of the things for me.
Well, that brings me to another question.
Okay.
When it comes to dating men, what type of guys are you into? Because here's my question. I would say a majority of the world is naive.
I would agree.
Cisgender straight men are naive.
Naive.
A lot of them don't really, I mean, they probably have 1,000,001 questions. They probably care a lot about what other people think. You know what I mean? They probably, whatever. So my point is, do you think there's hope for a God like that?
Yes. I'm going to cut you short because I know exactly what I want to say about this. So a fact about me, a fact about Mila. I've dated men my whole life. I've never dated women. I've never been interested in women or interested in dating women. And the one thing that's different for me is than most guys that I date is I'm always the new experience for them. I mostly date cis straight men that don't necessarily date trans women. Not saying that's the only way that I like it. I'm just saying that usually happens.
Right.
And then it's like, oh, I didn't know you were trans. I want to get to know you, but like, I don't know, I'm scared, but I'm not scared, but I'm scared, but I'm not, but I'm going to call you, but I'm going to talk to you, then I'm going to disappear and I'm come back. So knowing that is like where I'm at and the kind of guys I'm attracted to. Just, on paper, I'm attracted to men that identify as men, that, have a nice, that present themselves well, that are, educated, culturally open-minded and into diverse cultures, got a swag, and athletic, takes good care of their body. And I'm a girl. I like guys that are taller, but if it's the right gay, you can be, but what I'm looking for more so now than maybe years ago is someone that is not so concerned with the performance. I know who I am as a woman and how I carry myself is authentic. And I'm not going to be, I don't switch gears into a different person. I'm multi-layered, but pretty much what you see is what you get. And sorry, this is ordering something, sorry. But I'm just more about someone who can see me for more than just the performance of womanhood, who can really respect and honor the kind of person I am and my heart and my, my loves and passions and joys and my sense of humor and all of that stuff, because I take care of my body. I take care of myself. I feel like I'm a great catch, but then also someone has to be ready for something like that and not just wanting to experiment, because I'm not like just looking to experiment.
Mm-hmm. So with that said, you said a lot of times you're dating men who this is, I guess, their first experience.
Yeah.
So how does that work? Like, you have to educate them on?
Yeah. So there's a little bit of a saying, especially when like in the community. Sorry for the noise. There's a saying too that like when a guy meets a trans woman for the first time, there's this freak out factor. There's this like fear factor of like, oh my God, however they figure out that she's trans, if it's her telling them, if they're, having some adult time and something is different. It's really, a lot of those men come to a place where they start to, then the curiosity is piqued. Then they may not go searching, but then like if something comes up again or they meet, this is how when I met one of my ex-boyfriends, he told me a story about he met a trans girl out at a party or whatever, didn't know, and found out and freaked out and ran away. There's always that girl who starts the situation for them and she does not get the result. She is like the one who starts the catalyst, and it's like meeting them for the first time is like, you're not necessarily going to win that at that game, because he's going to freak out. And then a year down the road or however long it takes, he's going to be like, oh, this is familiar to me. And then it's going to want to be, oh, I'm more open-minded or I'm cool.
Okay. And I guess my last question about that is, are they Black men?
The men that I date or in general? I predominantly date pigmentally challenged men, meaning they're not.
Do you feel
I
like
love a woke man who is a different race. I'm really big into like uniting colors of Benetton moments. But to be completely honest with you, and I'm being very real when I say this, I'm not opposed to dating Black men. There are some Black men that I've dated or been on dates with that just weren't in the place for a relationship. But it is harder as a Black trans woman to meet a Black man, cis man, that has the space, capacity, wokeness, security to show up and to really be supportive and wonderful, and not want you to be their dirty little secret.
Got it.
That happens with white men too, but a lot more diversity. There's more space and more room to be like, you're beautiful and you're a woman that I like and that I respect, and I will, I'd love to treat you well. And, that comes from a lot of different angles. But because I've also been dealing with my own level of trauma with Black men from my childhood, where they have treated me, mistreated me, bullied me, called me all kinds of names, and then they come hollering at me, it can be a very weird, sticky situation.
I can only imagine. Okay. So let me just go ahead. I want to shout out the people who have brought us together. Shout out to the Intersection and the Gathering Spot for hooking up this platform for us to connect. I appreciate that, for us to have this heart to heart.
This heart to heart, yes.
I've been asking you questions the whole entire time. You asked me one question. Is there anything that you want to know from me?
Okay, I'd love to know, how do you really feel about your daughter's connection to this different level of freeness, of expressing, solidarity with people that are maybe different? And how would that look if she came to you one day and was feeling like, I met someone that may not be who you thought she should be with?
I personally, well, first of all, I love the fact that my daughter is like very much like, you can't tell her what she gonna do. She's very outspoken.
She can hold her own.
Yeah, I've always raised her to speak her mind, and sometimes that's annoying to me because she does it to me.
You get the back.
Even though I'm her mother, I feel like with Riley, at times it feels like we have a sister-friend relationship a lot of times. Okay, so with that being said, I love the fact that she's so loves all, she speaks out and she's, for everyone and no matter sex, race, gender, whatever. But at one time she said to me, and this wasn't necessarily about a specific anybody's gender or sexuality. It was just in general.
Okay.
She said that as of now, the way she is, she has dated, cisgender, young men, whatever. But I feel that she just, from the way she describes it, she believes in love is love, and she would not rule it out.
Yeah.
So with that being said, it was one time we was having a conversation, and she was saying that, and this was just talking about whether or not she would date a man who had dated men before.
Yeah. Let's talk about it. Come on.
Yeah. And she didn't see that as a problem. Or she didn't see she was just like, well, if a man has had an experience with a man, she didn't feel like, she would not rule that out. You know what I mean? Right. Whereas obviously, me growing up, Black girl in the South, that was kind of like unheard of.
That was unheard of.
To date a man that has dated or had a sexual experience with another man or whatever. So, and mind you, it's like, it was so crazy for me to have this conversation with her, because all day long, every day, it's like, I'm just like, I don't know. I consider myself as a woman who definitely has had all kind of sexual experiences.
Yeah, for sure.
But that particular experience of dating a man who had openly dated other men, that had just never occurred to me. You know what I'm saying? And so for her to say that, I was just kind of like, oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like
that's a progression right there. That's something that I think too is there are a lot of women who are thinking of, how they would feel about that and what does that look like for them. And I don't think it's wrong to feel that that's not for you, but I think we can't just, I don't know, sum up someone because they may have had an experiment or an experience.
No, I totally agree with you, but it's just like,
and that's how you learn, because I know this will never really happen culturally or in society, but the way that you learn how you feel about X, Y, and Z is through those formative years. I just feel like there's so much of this, like with men specifically, this impression of I gotta do this, and this, or I gotta have this kind of girl. That's okay. That's okay.
I guess I get it. Sorry.
But it's just this idea that you have to, have this certain protocol to be a guy or a man. And like, if you did anything else or had any other experiences, what that looks like for you, for where you grow up and what you grow into in your life. Because, when you're young, you do all kinds of things that don't necessarily define you, but they help you get to a place of defining who you are. Does that make sense?
Oh, sure. So I personally feel that I always connected to anything dealing with sexuality, the concepts of gender, anything like that. I always connected to how Black people have been brought up. Because also in the adult toy business, I also have had to learn a lot about the simple fact that, it hasn't been open for us as Black people to have these conversations.
Yeah.
And sexuality, gender, all of those things, you know what I mean? And so I kind of, I guess, have been on the forefront as far as like being a person who's open to speak about sex and different things openly as a Black woman. That wasn't the norm 10 years ago when I like started doing Candy Coated Nights and different things like that online. Right. And so I didn't realize how much of a taboo it was until people start saying it to me, even like when I was first started doing press on bedroom candy and stuff, like people would be saying, like, wow,
why are you doing that?
Yeah, nobody, like, that's unheard of, like stuff like that. Yeah. And but it's just kind of funny to me because I just looked at it as like, okay, it's I hate to say it, but it's a Black thing, when it comes to other races. In the conversations of sex, it's not that big of a deal. Like even when you go overseas
in Europe, they're talking about sex in schools,
right? Like
you're educating,
right? We just really started having sex on TV in the last decade and a half, since the 2000s. But in the 90s, you go over there and they had nudity in their commercials and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so it's just like I feel like we as Black people overall, and we have to
which is weird too, because like we have that, I think that stems from the shame we have over our how we shame like our bodies, and we don't make it's hard because there's already a narrative around what's acceptable for like a body type or what kind of body you have, when we know when everyone's in their room and they get the doors closed, they're getting down with whatever bodies that they like. Why can't we have that conversation, leading up to that, and like making people feel that's what they do in Europe is like, they basically don't weaponize the naked body. We weaponize that here. And it's like being naked is bad. Having your naked back, seeing your body is bad. Being Black and being in a Black family where you see your Black family members' naked body, not everyone, but it's always, And I'm not saying you need to go look at it, but I'm just saying, like, we all have one. We all know the parts that exist. And we shouldn't have so much shame around it.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, but as I said, I just feel like as these times change, our younger generations are just like so much more exposed to everything and just have a totally different view than
growing up. Yeah.
And so I just feel like everybody's evolving. That's just my personal feeling. So anyway, just to answer your question, I'm down with whatever Riley's down with, and clearly she's open to. So
yeah.
So I was like, I'm just, as her.
And I have one more question. Would you ever be open to working in music with a trans woman?
Of course. So what's up?
What's up with you?
Yeah, of course. We could definitely make that happen. I just need to know what type of direction you want to go in as far as like your next project. And we can have that conversation offline.
We can have that offline,
Yeah, but for sure, like, definitely. Yeah, so I would be excited to definitely to do some music with you, or
Yeah, I think that'd be dope. It's just, I just think it's one of those things where it's unprecedented, and I think it's important for us to be able to not only have these conversations, but to find ways to work with each other when it's right and when we can, and I think that shows people how great we are, because Black people and queer people and cis Black people, I think we just contribute so much to everything going on in the world that we have to just love each other. I think we gotta just make space for each other.
Yeah, and definitely we gotta let go of a lot of those old
habits
and old ideas of what people should be like and how they should act and whatever. It's just like we gotta let that go, move forward, and really do our best to try to become just better in general in society overall, not just Black, not just white, not just whatever, trans, cisgender, I don't care. It's like everybody needs to do better. And I feel like the conversations that are being had right now are definitely helping us get there.